Signed your name, now the bill won't stop.
Big promises, but the truth got dropped.
It's the enrollment trap, but we're fighting back.
If they sold you lies,
You can cut those ties, borrow a defense, take your power back. The enrollment trap.
Welcome to the very first episode of The Enrollment Trap. I'm Frank, and I'm here with my co-host, Michelle. This podcast is about making borrower defense to repayment feel human, understandable, and less overwhelming. If you're here, you might be carrying stress, confusion, or even shame about your student loans or your school experience, and we want to start by saying you're not alone.
Hi, everyone. We named this podcast The Enrollment Trap because that's what so many borrowers actually lived through. Not a mistake, not a bad decision, a trap built with urgency, emotion, and promises that didn't match reality. Today, we're going to talk about what borrower defense really is, why it exists, and how to understand your own experience inside that trap.
What borrower defense actually is. Borrower defense to repayment is a federal protection that lets you ask the Department of Education to cancel your federal student loans if your school misled you, lied to you, or used deceptive practices to get you to enroll or stay enrolled. It's not a forgiveness program based on income or public service. It's a remedy for harm. Borrower defense has existed since 1994, and it was created because Congress recognized that students needed protection when schools used false promises to get them in the door.
And that harm can take so many forms: inflated job placement rates, promises about accreditation, pressure to enroll right now, or being told you'd make a certain salary after graduation. If the picture they painted wasn't real, borrower defense is how you say, I shouldn't be stuck with the fallout.
Why borrower defense exists? Borrower defense didn't appear out of nowhere. It exists because some schools engaged in widespread, systematic misrepresentation. A major turning point came in 2015 when Corinthian colleges collapsed after investigators found pervasive lies about job prospects and program quality. That collapse exposed how deeply some institutions had misled students.
Borrower defense exists because the harm was real. People were pressured into programs using emotional manipulation and urgency. They were told things that weren't true. They were left with debt for degrees that didn't deliver. Borrower defense is a consumer protection, not a loophole. What borrower defense is not: borrower defense is surrounded by myths, and clearing them up helps people breathe easier. It's not a lawsuit. It's not a criminal accusation. It doesn't require documents. It, it doesn't require perfect memory. And it's not something only certain schools qualify for.
And it's not about proving your school was evil. It's about explaining what you were told, what you believed, and how that shaped your decision. Your experience is the evidence. The heart of a borrower defense claim. Every borrower defense claim comes down to three simple questions. What were you told? What did you believe because of that? And how did it harm you? That's the core of the process, not documents, not legal citations, not perfect recall, just your story told clearly.
And notice what's not on that list: screenshots, recordings, contracts. Those things can help, but they're not required. Your lived experience is the center of your claim. Why borrowers feel ashamed. A lot of people feel embarrassed talking about their school experience. They think they should have known better.
But predatory schools are experts at emotional manipulation. They target people who are trying to improve their lives. They use hope as bait. You weren't naive, you were hopeful, and hope is not a flaw. The tools we offer in the Discord. Inside of our Discord, we've built tools to help you understand your experience and tell your story clearly. These tools don't replace your voice, they support it. They help you see the patterns, the pressure, and the harm that you live through. Some of the tools we offer are the misconduct matcher, helps you identify the specific types of misrepresentation your school used. The timeline builder helps you map out what happened, when, and why it mattered. The harm explainer helps you understand the different kinds of harm borrower defense recognizes. The safe language translator helps you express your experience clearly without overclaiming. The evidence builder helps you identify what you do have, even if you think you have nothing. The denial decoder helps you understand denial letters and what they actually mean. The reconsideration package helps you rebuild your claim if you need to resubmit. And the orientation map helps you understand where you are in the process and what comes next.
These tools exist because borrower defense can feel overwhelming. They're here to give you clarity, structure, and confidence. You don't have to figure this out alone. You don't have to guess. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be honest about what happened to you.
What this podcast will do. In the enrollment trap, we're going to walk through borrower defense step by step. We'll talk about how to understand what happened at your school, how to build a clear narrative, what counts as harm, how to handle a denial, and how to rebuild for reconsideration.
And we're going to do it in a way that feels calm, clear, and human. No jargon, no judgment, just guidance, clarity, and support. Now, let me take a moment to share my story about poverty, desperation, and a life of being held back and stuck. How it started? I was a single mom on full disability, living that life of poverty. I tried to go back to school where I was living in Ohio, but life got in the way. I had always liked design. I was actually accepted to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh out of high school, but at the time I had to move to a campus out of state, and I just couldn't move out of state at the time. A few years down the road, the internet became a lot more involved in higher education. Online schools seemed like it'd be a good option for me. I did a search and up popped Art Institute Online, and the website said it was accredited. I met with an admissions counselor, and I didn't realize at the time they saw me coming. They wanted all kinds of personal information. They made it feel like I was their friend. They were really interested in me. Um, I told them my whole story. I was vulnerable. I feel now like they specifically targeted me. So they promised me the world, basically. They said, when I graduate, I'm going to have job placement specialists to help me get into in front of the top agencies of the time. And this was in the early 2000s. Places like MTV and Pixar, Disney, and Rolling Stone. They blank out told me I could be the next Annie Leibovitz. And it seemed too easy. It just seemed too good to be true. I thought that was it. Like, this was my chance to build a better life for me and my son. So I went for it. Where it went wrong was the first red flag regarding the software that was needed for the school. The admissions counselor made it seem like the programs, all the software, would be included and covered by the tuition. But I found out literally the day before class started that that wasn't the case. And I panicked and had to spend borrow money to spend hundreds of dollars on the software because I couldn't afford it and I felt I needed it for school. Well, I was told I needed it for school. I had to get all the software from like design tools and word processing, you know the ones. Even when they told me the student discount code, it didn't work. That should have been my first red flag. When classes started, I felt very out of place, and the instructors, they were just barely there. They didn't engage with us students. And mostly, as long as we did the assignments, they didn't care. They just graded us. And I got straight A's all through. And something just kept telling me this was too easy. How could someone who had a .08 grade point average or .8 grade point average in high school and barely graduated be getting straight 4.0s all through college? It wasn't adding up. So I did well in my classes, and as graduation got closer, I didn't receive clear information from the school about where to go, like for commencement, and or what to do next, or like we didn't have any information from them. It was through a post from another student that talked about a post graduation portfolio event in Pittsburgh. Now, that was the home school of Art Institute Online. Keep that in mind. The school did not tell me about that. I had to talk to the student who was taking online classes, but also on campus. So I went and I spent all kinds of money preparing for this big event, had really no idea of what I was doing. And when I arrived, it was clear that on-campus students had been coached and prepared more, and I hadn't. I was so unprepared, and I was completely embarrassed. On top of that, the employers that they claimed were top of the line, major companies, they weren't. They were just small local companies, like your local marketing company or the local print shop. Nothing like MTV or Disney or anything. After graduation, the commencement happened and I went home and I thought, well, what next? I was told when I applied that job placement and career guidance was going to be available, but that wasn't the case. I inquired about it and was told after I graduated that no, you had to be an on-campus student to get that assistance. And I quickly realized now that I have this degree, I'm completely on my own. After I graduated, I struggled to find steady work in my field. A lot of employers wanted a bachelor's degree. I only had an associate's degree. So I eventually decided to go back and was trying to get my bachelor's degree. And about a year in, I just luckily got a job in my field in another state. So I had to pack up and move, 2 hours away in this other state. I was getting ready to do another class, and I talked to my advisor and I said, "What do I do?" And they told me, "Log into your class and tell the instructor that you're taking the session off." And I did exactly what they told me. But later, I was told I owed money for that class that I never attended, all because I logged in to tell my instructor I was not taking the class. How messed up is that? And because of that, they claimed I owed over $1,000 for this class, and at the time, I could not afford that. And they said I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't transfer my schools. They wouldn't transfer my or send my transcripts. I had to pay for that to re-enroll. And there was just nothing else I could do about it. And I went back and forth with the school for 2 years, and eventually I just gave up. So all of that debt, and I didn't even get a bachelor's degree. Years later, when the forbearance kept running out and it was time to start making payments, I noticed something. I noticed that my loan balance doubled. And for us old hatters, there was a time where all your paperwork was like they had to mail you the paper, you had to sign things and then mail it back. So there was a time period where they were switching to digital files. And it was around that time for me, they just automated everything and my loan balance doubled. And I inquired about it, could not get no solid answers from anybody. Later, when I found out uh, the school was closing, I called up the head of the registrar's office and I begged him to send me my transcripts, release them, because the school's closing and there was nothing I could do. I couldn't start a new college. I'd have to start all over again. So they did. They kindly, very kindly wiped away that over $1,000 debt because they knew. And they sent me my transcripts. And along with that, they sent me the register of all my classes and the loans. And I discovered that they had entries in there for classes and time periods that I was not enrolled in. That's when I knew something wasn't right. That's when I knew I was fraud. They were frauds. And for a long time, I didn't even know that there was a way to challenge this. Every time I called the loan servicers and asked for, line items, they said, "We don't provide that." I wanted a detailed list of all my loans that were dispersed. They would not provide that. I had evidence in my hand that the school was a fraud, and I just did not know what to do about it. And at some point, I was online and I learned about borrower defense. The Art Institute, my school, was named in the Sweet case. And that's really what led me to where I'm at now. The Sweet case is making sure people like me who were misled can get the relief we're owed through borrower defense. And here I am, I'm still waiting. This debt still hangs over me. So it didn't just impact those few years of my life. It literally has affected my whole life for the last 20 years. And it's continuing, and I don't see an end in sight. It's affected my finances, my housing stability, my ability to plan for the future. And even though I am working and have been so fortunate to work for the employer I do, they gave me a cap because I don't have my bachelor's degree. They know that I have an associate's degree and I cannot make any more unless I get a bachelor's degree. And for the last 15 years, I've had to deal with that and be stuck in that position. it had made me fearful that I couldn't try to find other work because I only had a bachelor's degree and I only had an associate's degree and everybody wanted a bachelor's degree. So I felt just lucky to have the job that I had. And it's literally kept me trapped my whole adult life here. I can't move forward, and it's causing all these additional effects now because I'm 51 and yes, I am fully employed, but I'm terrified if I ever lose my job, I could not use my degree to get anywhere near close where I'm at now. I just don't know what I'll do. And with all the stress and pressure, especially from the borrower defense case, being in court, you don't know, you're not getting the full support from, the FSA or, from the government. It's put such a tremendous stress on my life, and it's been a black cloud hanging over me this whole time. I've also been dealing with chronic cancer. I was diagnosed with cancer about 8 years ago. And where with going through COVID and all this, I'm stuck in a position now where I have to rent a bedroom from family because I can't afford to pay for a mortgage or rent because the debt to income ratio on my credit is so bad. It always pushes me up into a higher interest rate. And I've been told if I just didn't have that student loan debt on my credit report, that the payments would be cheaper and more affordable. And it's been like that for 20 years. So if I go and get a car, I always have to pay more. The payments have to be more. I can't get a house. For the rent, they always make me pay like the extra, like the highest amount. You have to pay first month, last month, and deposit instead of just a deposit in the first month. It's just, it's been devastating. And to just sit here and have my whole life wrapped around this, where I can't go and get my own place and heal, has just affected my life so much. And I couldn't even talk about it because nobody would understand. I was embarrassed. I fell for this, and it's just devastating. And I'm in my second half of my life, and I don't know when this will ever go away. But I still keep my faith that it will someday. And I guess my hope is that talking about it, you hearing about it, maybe you're willing to share your story also, because it is healing. So there we go, Frank.
So thank you, Michelle, for sharing that. When did you first apply for borrower defense?
My application was September 2nd, 2022. I missed the first to be in the main class because I was going through chemo at the time. And it took like everything just to keep track of everything. And when I went to apply during that time period, the FSA, the verbiage on their website made me think that I didn't even qualify for it. So I didn't even, I just thought I wasn't eligible. So I didn't do it. And it wasn't until after that time period I started in the Facebook groups that from Teresa and Moki were talking about get your applications in, this is a very short window, you got to do it. And I asked them, do I actually qualify? And when they told me yes, I lost I lost it. I was like, that's my only salvation. Like I had to do it. So it took all that time to gather up my evidence. And, back then there was a lot of tech issues, and, going through all that with my chemo was just a nightmare. But we did it. We did it. I did it.
It really it was a double issue for you because not only did you have the worry of the debt, you also had your health concerns, which, just makes the entire situation so much worse. Typically, you want to focus on getting better and healing yourself and doing what you need to do. Um, to deal with the cancer, but you also have this, huge debt over your head that is a constant worry. And I think everyone, whether they have health issues or not, understand the pressure that's on you with this student loan debt lingering over your head for years. And for many people, they're on some type of repayment plan, like, the earn as you go plan or the income based plan. And the worst part about that I've seen is your monthly payments typically on those plans don't even cover the interest. So you're making
Right.
these payments and you're just watching your loan balance go up, which just increases the stress that you feel over that. And then to add on top of that, what you're going through physically it's just not good. Um,
Yeah, there
and
were there were times where they were hounding me for those payments, and the highest amount was, now mind you, this was, over 10 years ago. Their payments were like $600, and my rent was just above that. I was paying 725 in rent. And I thought, how am I going to be able to pay this? I couldn't pay rent. I couldn't pay any of my bills. And it's been that way the whole time. And I mean, I remember one time going to get um, a crown on my tooth because my tooth chipped. And I couldn't even get care credit because my debt to income ratio was too high and I didn't qualify for it. And so I suffered. This was before I was diagnosed with cancer, but I suffered with tooth pain for quite a long time. And I had to wait until I got my income tax. And that was another thing. My income tax was garnished one year. And I was going to use this was after the tooth thing, but I used that money to get a place, or I was going to use that money to get a place, and they took it. And so I was stuck in a situation back then. I mean, it's it's just never ending. It's never ending.
it's really not. And one of the things you alluded to when you were talking was you reached out to FSA, you reached out to your servicer, like, hey, what can I do? This is what I've experienced. And none of them have ever offered up. Have you considered borrower defense? Right. So the
Never.
people who are supposed to help you, the people who are managing your loans or, representing the government that's supposed to, kind of be on the taxpayer side, never offered that information up to you. So I personally am so thankful for the work that both Teresa and I'm going to call her Alicia because y'all know I can't say her name right. I've been pronouncing it wrong the entire time I've known her. But I am so thankful for what they set up with the Facebook groups and Reddit because it gives people who don't know about it an opportunity to find out about it and to see, am I eligible? What do I have to do? And really, this Discord is an extension of the Facebook groups and Reddit, the subreddits that the two of them founded. Um, you know, I'm very active with both of them. They do pop in usually to talk in our private chat. Um, so, like, I can't, speak highly enough for what those two have done to help people who have been defrauded by these predatory schools. Um, but back to you. So you applied in September of 2022, which makes you post class, and
Yes.
Art Institute is an Exhibit C school. So based on the settlement, you should have received a decision for approval or denial by January 28th, 2026. I'm assuming that didn't happen because you, as you said, you're still waiting. And now the Department of Education and the Department of Justice have recently filed for a stay as well as filed an appeal to the Ninth District Appellate Court. So this is really prolonging all of this even more for you. How does that make you feel, knowing that you were so close to that finish line and you should be there? And we know PPSL has stated, that deadline is still in play, but we know the DOE and DOJ are going to do whatever they can to try to extend that as long as they can. How does that make you feel as someone that's waiting for that, what we're calling the golden letter by March 30th?
I'm so angry. I'm so angry because, eh, I mean, I know I'm not the only one, and I know people have worse situations than I do. Um, I don't know right now if they're gonna start to try and collect. Um, with what's going on today, I just have no idea, and so I kinda made a decision, um, a while ago before we got closer to this date. I will die before I pay a dime for these student loans. Um, I don't believe that I received the education that I was promised. And if anything, I feel that myself and every single one of us deserve some sort of extra compensation for all the pain and suffering we have exhibited well over, I mean, mine's over 20 years ago. Some students, not quite that long, but like if you've experienced any kind of frustration, I mean, that's pain and suffering. And I think we've all experienced that in some capacity. I don't know how they would measure it, but I mean, the to me, just having my loans discharged isn't enough. And I don't know what if there's anything that could be done about it, but it's a start. And to prolong that is sickening because these are real people. These aren't just numbers on a screen or letters on a screen. Like the whole entire system is flawed. And it makes me even more angry to know that there's still for profit schools out there, still frauding students, and nobody's doing anything about it. I
It's
have nieces and nephews going into college, and I've taken it to educate them on researching the right colleges to go to and know about their student loans and know the risks they're going to take. And how sad is that?
I mean, the downside is, these for-profit schools, they're very profitable. And unfortunately, as we know, some of our lawmakers are heavily invested in some of these schools. Um, so of course they're going to do what's best for their pocket, but that's kind of the politician's way, isn't it? Um, but Michelle, I want to thank you for sharing your story. We've talked a lot, being one of the moderators. We've shared a lot about our stories and stuff. So I really appreciate you kind of going more public with it. I know you were one of the individuals at the December 11th hearing, and you were given an opportunity to share your story. Um, I do appreciate you doing that here today with us and letting everybody know. Again, no one is alone in this. We've all felt that. Um, we've all felt lost and like there's no exit. So I want to thank you for sharing that, Michelle.
And Frank, I want to thank you for one giving me the voice, the opportunity, and the platform to speak, but also having the opportunity to help so many other people out there that have gone through the same or worse, or is just like just getting familiar with borrower defense and still ready to apply because it's like they're understanding that they're victims and there's something that can be done about it. And the whole system is flawed, but there's still something that can be done. And so I just want to thank you for organizing all this and putting it all out there and making it available for everybody. It's You are amazing. You're so amazing.
Look,
Um,
I just took the lead from Teresa and Alicia. They basically built the foundation. I saw an opportunity because, as I've told you, I'm a huge Discord person, and we know sometimes the responses on Facebook and Reddit are a little slow in coming. And I think we've been pretty quick with responding to questions and comments in the Discord. It's been kind of quiet lately, but if you were here on January 28th when the Discord kicked off, it was anything but quiet and orderly. There was chaos in that day because we were all waiting to see what would happen when when that deadline finally hit. Um, so I've enjoyed the Discord. I've enjoyed interacting with folks, building some really great relationships with yourself, Steph, Leslie, some of the other folks that are Jay, who are real talkative in the Discord. I've really enjoyed that. But again, this is really, I attribute it all back to Teresa and Alicia because without them, we wouldn't have any of this. So
Absolutely.
it's really, this is just all in honor of the two of them. Um, but I wanted to say
100%.
thank you. I wanted to thank you.
And I would like to invite others to have this opportunity as well and come up here and speak your truth and your experience in any capacity. Frank, do you want to talk about future episodes for that?
Yeah, so we're gonna do weekly episodes, and we're going to touch on either the different tools, some ins and outs of borrower defense, and then we're going to have a segment each week dedicated to someone who wants to share their story. You can get as personal about it or as impersonal about it as you'd like, and it will be an interview, sort of like what Michelle and I did today, asking you questions, getting your feeling on things. You do have to be comfortable being on voice because this is recorded and will be shared out with our podcast because we are recording it and we will put it out on a site. So you have to be comfortable, talking about this. You don't have to use your real name. You can use your alias in Discord if you are afraid of, family or friends hearing about this. Um, but we're looking for people who want to share their story um, and be interviewed about their experience, how it's impacted them. And we don't want to just hear from people who are waiting for resolution. If you're someone who has already received, you know, their discharge and all of the other parts that go along with it, and you want to share your story and how, it impacted your life when that discharge came through. Um, we'll definitely personalize the interview to what you're sharing. But yeah, we're looking for people. If you're someone that's interested in sharing that, reach out to myself or Michelle and let us know, hey, you know what? I'm down for telling my story because I realize how important this all really is. And we will definitely get with you and kind of discuss beforehand kind of the questions we'll ask and what we're going to ask you to kind of go over. Uh, but yeah, I think this will help others because there are so many people who really do feel a level of shame or guilt or whatever. We all go through a whole set of emotions over this process, and I think hearing that others have experienced the same, are going through the same emotional roller coaster will help us all feel better about it and not that we did anything wrong. So, like I said, if
And
you're interested, just let us know.
speaking about it, it brings like before I went to the December 11th hearing, I had never spoken about any of this to anyone in my life. And just telling my story brought such huge relief to me and brought a healing that I did not expect. And the more I'm telling my story, the more healing it is. So my hope is, if you're suffering with all of this and just feel like you don't have anybody to listen, we're here to listen. We're building camaraderie and a community of, you know, people that are experiencing all of this. So hopefully we can pass that healing on to you as well.
Well, with that being said, we definitely went over the time we had expected for this podcast to be, which is fine because I think the conversation was good. I think, again, hearing your story was good, but we're going to wrap it up now. If today's episode helped you, breathe a little easier, that's a good sign you're in the right place. Borrower defense isn't about being perfect, it's about being honest.
And you already know your story better than anyone. If you're listening and you're not part of the Discord community yet, just let us know and we'll make sure you get the link. It's a calm, supportive space where you can learn, ask questions, and use the tools we talked about today and at your own pace. We're going to end the recording now. So if you're with us live on Discord, stay right where you are. We'll open the floor for questions in just a moment.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us, and check us out next week. Thank you.
It's the enrollment trap, but we're fighting back. The enrollment trap.